record on this computer. Okay, got it.
All right, good deal. So thanks for everybody. Hopefully there's quite a few of you. I don't know, I don't have track of who's all on here, but for those of you who were here last time, it was pretty fun actually for me to be able to talk about some of the tricks and tips for going upwind in the U20 that I've learned only over the past couple of years, actually. In all fairness, I started sailing with Tim Porter on Mighty Mouse in 2017. And so, I finally got my boat just last year, my own boat, I should say. And so it's kind of been, a pretty steep learning curve. I try a lot. I try to learn from everything that I try. I wouldn't say that it's always a success, but and I've got a couple more ideas, and some things you're going to find out about tonight. Some things in the previous video about going upwind, I think spurred a lot of interest in terms of like the main sheet bridle, just rig tune in general, boom vang got a lot of attention, just trying to keep the mast, more in column. So, this downwind tune-up presentation, probably not as eye-opening, but still I feel lots of information that it's kind of fun for me to do because it reminds me of a lot of things that I forget about. And you'll see there's lots of examples of boats from Lake Norman, obviously in this presentation. There's some from other, I found some Google-ish images, but for the most part, these are all have been taken around here on Lake Norman by some others. And so, it's predominantly light to medium kind of conditions around here. I don't know. I was thinking about it today. I don't know that I personally have sailed a U20 in more than 20 knots of breeze. So when it comes to that, I'm definitely no expert whatsoever. Other boats, yes, but the U20, no. So I have not lost a rig on a U20 yet. So that part's good. I hope to never, but there will be some things that come up, I'm sure, that you guys might have questions about that I can answer in terms of, what I know, but in terms of actual experience, I may not have that, just to be upfront and honest with you now. So we'll go ahead and slide on. Like we were talking about this picture. Didn't know if it was Labor Day or hospice last year, 2020. This is my boat number 20 here. This is BJ Jones, Mark Asplund, I believe, Trees, Decker, and John Butine. Kind of all spread out here. It was nice, overcast, obviously, nice day. One thing I try to teach people, or especially the kids, when you take them out sailing, and it's kind of a little bit deceiving, I guess. Let me hide this. In order to go fast downwind, you have to look upwind. I don't know how many of you actually think about that, but in all fairness, when you're going upwind, you're looking upwind because that's where the wind's coming from. Well, it's no different when you're going downwind, right? The wind is still coming from upwind. So you have to remember that. I think, there'll be a couple other examples in here. BJ, I think, is one of the best at staying focused and always paying attention to what's going on around him, which makes him, I think, one of the better sailors downwind by far, just because of that. I think he's always looking around and he's always in tune with what he's doing and what the conditions are. And that's the key, I believe, to getting downwind. So, here, the pictures, first of all, let's go back to that. I kept these from the last presentation, if you remember. This was the Canepas when they did the photo shoot in the early days, and we made these sails. These were orange. The sail was actually orange, the orange spinnaker. So I found another shot. It's pretty cool. It's a great looking, considering that was generation 1 for spinnakers. It was pretty darn close. Pretty cool though. This is a great shot. I love this. I'm glad I found that. So with that said, each puff not only translates to boat speed, but allows you to sail a lower angle. Well, for the most part, you probably all know that, right? The other thing it does is it lightens the load on the boat. It allows you to do more things. So you really have to look upwind and find the puffs, because it's obvious boat speed, but allows you to sail around a lot more. And when you're sailing around a lot more, that's when you're able to make small gains. If you're not doing that, that's when you're not getting those small gains. Same thing upwind, that little bit of a lift that you can kind of squeeze up in, or if it's a header and you could just go to drive into it a little bit further. Those are the little things going upwind that make a big difference. Well, the same thing happens downwind. Every little bit of boat speed and a little bit of angle make a huge, huge difference. In these boats, we're not going to outrun the wind. So you have to look upwind for the next puff. I've been watching some of the Jeep, what was it? The TP52s are, I think, next weekend, but the GP 50s, what are they? The World Series. Anybody? No.
Yeah, the GP50 is the old, the Larry.
What's that series? The
GP.
The Sail GP.
Sail GP. Okay, thank you very much. Golly. Sail GP. So yeah, the catamarans. They're not looking upwind or behind them, I should say, for breeze. Because they're always making apparent wind. So, anybody that watches that stuff, don't think that's anything like what we're doing. So you got to look, in this case, behind you or upwind to see where the next puff is. Like I said, when the boat accelerates, it also unloads. It makes it a little bit easier, actually, for you to go sailing. The boats have a big rudder, and sometimes you may feel like they're not big enough, but in all actuality, the rudders are quite big. They're very efficient, which is nice. It's one of the greatest parts of the boat, I believe, personally. And so with that, the faster you go, the more you want to utilize the efficiency of that rudder and really be able to move the boat around. I've noticed that a lot, especially in that light to medium breeze, especially because those kites are so small that little moves of the tiller make a big difference. And so when you accelerate, that just kind of magnifies. So you have to really be careful not to be driving the boat too much, because A, the rudders are big, and B, you don't want to be driving all over the place. You want to use it, but don't overuse it. And with that said, it's kind of a cool little shot. This is a little bit kind of ghosting back to the days when Jay and Peasy Glacier, they were at the inception of this boat and the sails and the sail plan. And they had danger sails at the time. They had just come to Ullman Sails with us in Newport Beach, and they still ran all the One Design sails downstairs. And this was their logo, the Danger Sails. It was a great, great logo. I think they changed it now to just Glacier, but this was the original Danger logo, which is pretty cool. I made this one, but you can tell here that that's kind of what they were. So these were Glacier sails. I don't know when this is. It's pretty exciting. There's another, looks like a U20 probably down here, blasting off also. These little funny 5.7s are kind of, I don't know. I'm a little iffy on them, but this was a great shot. I'm glad I found it. But things to remember when it is windy, but the apparent wind, I should say, makes dramatic sweeps as the boat accelerates and decelerates. So this guy, you can tell over here, is accelerating, right? He's just bow up, charging, left his jib out. I don't know, you guys might have a little bit more experience with this or not. When we're blasting off on the J70s, we're leaving the jib out. For the most part, it's helping hold the bow down. This guy, on the other hand, is decelerating. The difference, obviously, the boat here is nice and light, pulled up over the waves. This one right here just stuffed the bow, loaded everything up, and this is really dangerous. And you can see here how this little kink in the rig is it's not great. It's a little scary. I don't know what happened next, but this is what happens when the boat decelerates. First years of going to Key West with the J70s, the boats were loading up, same thing, because the boat doesn't necessarily go faster. At a certain point, it does actually load up because there's so much rocker. And we were blowing the spinnaker halyard. It would just pull right through the cleat because the boat loaded up so much and the sail loaded up that it would just pull right through the spinnaker cleat. So we had to bypass, we had to go through that cleat on the mast and then go down to the cabin top and use the furling cleat. So we had a double cleat, but it was not ideal. But that's what happens when the boat loads up, and that's not what you want. You can see here, obviously the mast gets very vulnerable, especially the further this boom goes out, because now it's just pushing sideways. Right here, we're unsupported, right? No backstays. And so all the load is on these uppers. And it's, sad to say, because, as soon as if you have the boom bang on a lot and the boom goes out, you're really compressing this mast sideways. If you have the boom off, which is the next thing that you would think, well, then what's happening is you're pressing against this leeward spreader really hard. And these battens up here are actually pressing against this leeward shroud, creating almost, more force on the rig. So just things to be aware of. I'm assuming this guy made it. I don't know. If anybody knows who this was, I'd be curious. But
so Steve, in that situation, what would be your first adjustment?
Boy, that's a good question. The only thing I see here basically is, besides luck, one thing I do notice is that their halyard is kind of like normal. We always set them off. I don't know, we're anywhere from 6 to 12 inches on the halyard. But the one thing I would do is I would have my tack as far down as possible. It may have been, maybe it's stretched. It's got plenty of deflection in the pole. There's a lot of load on that thing right there right now. But that helps keep the luff straighter and the kite maybe technically flatter. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just the things that I see. I like the idea of having the jib out over here on this, but I don't know for sure if that's a good thing. I know it's a bear to try to get them to furl and unfurl when the rigs are pulled that far forward because there's no tension on the head stay. But I do know that, having the jib out does help keep the bow down when you are kind of in that, blast off reach mode. That said, I don't know.
Hey, Steve, you're saying in higher breeze that you have the halyard out about 6 inches?
Well, I say we all, I'm pretty sure that we tie there's a stopper knot in the halyard, and then the halyard itself is tied to the sail. And so it gives you that little bit of distance to keep the sail away from the mast. It gives you a little bit of a shackle type twist, kind of, make believe if you don't have a shackle, if you tie them on, like I tie them on. So it gives you a little bit of a twist factor. But we're not going to change that. I don't think. I don't know that that's necessarily a tuning tool in breeze. It may be. I probably, if I knew it was going to be this windy all day, yeah, sure, I'd probably, take that stop or tie this as tight as possible. And like I said, this may just be simply deflection and stretch in the tack line. That thing, that could have been tight when they left the weather mark very easily. Like I said, that's a lot of deflection and plenty of load there. So just be careful not to overtrim the spinnaker. Obviously, they're doing a good job. I mean, the kite is coming off the rig. So this portion of the sail, not doing a lot. So that's good. It's kind of depowered. And they're undersheeted, if you will, because they've got a full blue panel curl in here, you can tell. So that's good. Hopefully the boat didn't, crash after this, but hopefully it popped up and kept going. But just things to keep in mind. Like I said, I haven't sailed in these conditions, so I'm not the best person.
Steve, the only
to
thing I
ask.
would say on that would be that just you want to head for the low spots of the waves.
Mm-hmm.
just so you don't dive into a wave like that. So you're looking for the low spots because you're going faster than waves many times. That's when it's blowing that hard.
Right, right. And I think, that's kind of the benefit of having the jib out, is that that'll help you kind of, I think it'll help you mentally focus on keeping the bow up. I know, like I said, when we sail the 70s that way, it's just an inherent thing. If that jib's out, you know that you're always rocked up, you're always bow on top of the water, and you're just trying to go as fast as possible, regardless of too much, you don't get too much caught up in the angles or which way you're going until you get there, because you're getting there faster. But it's just mentally, it kind of keeps you in this bow up mentality. Whereas I think here, if you put the jib away and you're just sailing on the kite, you're in that like kind of moderate breeze kind of feeling mentality, and you may be trying to drive the waves a lot more. And of course, you're probably going to miss a couple of them, which obviously, happened here. And if you notice, they're all looking back, which I told you to all look upwind for the puffs, but these guys are looking back while they're going forwards here, hoping this guy probably doesn't run over them. But anyway, we'll get a little bit down the road here. So the tack line, talking about that a little bit more. We're all used to the tacks being up. I put on here 12 to 18 inches, kind of rough estimate. Some people probably are in the 6 to 10. We've tried as much as 2 feet, and I won't say that it's not bad, but it has its moments. The normal tack line from the end of the pole, a tight tack line is going to make the spinnaker harder to trim because it's pulling the luff so straight. And we all know that these class kites are obviously short. They're not even 2 block measurements. And so as soon as you pull that tack line tight, it's similar to pulling the halyard tight on the Genoa. You're pulling all that sail shape up forward. And when you make that big knuckle forward, it has a tendency to always want to be backwinding. Or in this case, since it's not attached to a headstay, it's falling over on itself. So a couple things in these pictures, what we noticed. So this is this left-hand picture with the red arrow and the yellow arrow. This was a generation 2 kite, and this is a generation 3 kite. The red arrow is the 3. And we took the 2 kite with the yellow. These were just kind of notes that I was making for myself. And we tried to go back and change a couple things on it. And that's what we ended up with, was generation 3 here. And what we noticed, I figured it out afterwards, but the trimmers, we swapped boats this day. And both trimmers both mentioned that the new kite was harder to trim, or you had to be on it a lot more. It was definitely more, flighty, if you will. So went back, read the notes on the design changes that we had made, and kind of maybe figured out a couple things in terms of the design. And so I still sail with this sail, but it's the only one of its kind. But I will probably end up getting one of these with my next sail, which is the generation 2. That said, this is actually the same sail here, the purple one on the right. That's actually a Gen 2 sail. So all the customers here have Gen 2 sails. I'm the only one with this 3rd gen. Not the jury was out. I mean, this day that we did this, there was not a decided faster sail or boat for that matter. But what we went home with was the fact that both trimmers made the same comment about it being a little bit tougher to trim. And so if that's the case, and there was no clear definitive design advantage, then kind of fall back to making it a little bit more friendly. So
Who were the 2 trimmers that day?
So I believe, I forget who it was. One boat was Tim Porter and maybe Bill Spencer.
Okay.
Kind of a normal crew for me. And then it was me and was it? Hey, Scott Olson, were you with me that day? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Were you?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So Scott, yeah. So I was driving one boat, Tim was driving the other boat. And like I said, we had swapped at one point during the day, just to kind of try to even things out a little bit, or not, for that matter. And like I said, we weren't, I mean, I've got probably 100 pictures. Paul King and Murphy, actually, yeah, you're right. Murphy was out with Paul that day, and they shot some video and pictures of us kind of just doing some two boat testing. So that was just kind of the two things that we learned. And here you can see, so what we did is on this sail, we took vertical camber out of the sail. And I think that was probably the downfall, because it made this exit off the mast a little too vertical, which then makes the luff too straight. Whereas I think the Gen 2 sail comes away from the rig a little bit further and away from the main, and then turns and comes and continues down. So it wasn't a dramatic change, but it was a very subtle change. But in the end, you don't always change them for the better. Sometimes, you learn what you don't like as much, and so you just kind of go back. So, but like I said, this is the same sail, the purple sail. This is Scott Olson and his crew. This is that same weekend of that very first picture, the hospice or whatever he decided that was. The windier it gets, the tighter the tack line can be. We saw that in the previous picture. And the higher the tack, the higher the curl. So if you let the tack line off further, you can tell that we're allowing the sail to lift up and come more horizontally off the mast, which then makes this shoulder of the sail a little bit more twitchy. So you can see, for instance, here, this is folded over almost 2 panels because the tack line is so high, because the rig's getting pulled so far forward and closing this measurement between the tip of the pole and the hounds, or the spinnaker halyard hoist. This measurement is getting so close together that this is essentially like letting the tack off. And so you can see here how that top of that sail is just going to get to where you can't trim it. So the higher the tack, the higher the curl. Same thing. If we let these off, it's going to start curling the tops sooner. I know a lot of people had a lot of tack line questions. We'll continue to kind of cover it a little bit. So this is a big one here, heel angle. This is, I think, really important. It makes a huge difference. And again, we're talking about moderate, VMG breeze. So a slight windward heel, you can see here, Scott Olson, Dave Rink, and is that Rick Cataldo, I believe. The 3 of them sailing together. They're all big guys, and they're all sitting on the weather side. And this slight bit of weather heel I love it. I mean, I think it's great. You can see here, it's obviously probably pretty close to maybe the same leg, who knows? All 3 on the weather side, a little bit of weather heel. The tack line's down pretty close, which is good. You can see here how they're, using that weather heel to kind of get this kite to help rotate a little bit further out to weather, which makes a big difference. The way you notice that is by looking at the tack line, making sure that tack line is coming up off of the pole. So many times, if your boat is flat or heeled to leeward, the tack line will come down here and migrate to leeward. That's the last thing you ever want. We learned that on the Melges 24s, back in the 90s. Dave Ullman, because the kites were big enough, but Dave Ullman always said if the tack line goes up, we could let it off and it would help the kite. But anytime that tack line started migrating off to leeward, we'd pull it back down tight. So slight windward heel, I believe, makes a huge difference. The breeze is going to matter. Obviously, you can't do it all the time, but it allows the boat to naturally turn down in a puff. Okay, so you think about it, as the puff hits, the apparent wind moves forward, right? And so what happens is, instead of that puff hitting you and heeling you over, and we're going to go through this on another slide, it's naturally, the boat is wanting to turn down to the weather mark. So for instance, obviously, these guys are sailing as low as possible. The leeward mark is bound to be below them, probably not above them, right? And so anytime you can make gains to leeward, you want to. Having that slight windward heel is going to do that. It's going to help that. It's going to allow the boat to always, in this case, want to turn right, right? If you heel the boat over to leeward, the boat turns up to the left.
Yeah, you can see
You
it.
hear the boat over to the left right here, the boat turns right down away from the wind, which is what you want when that puff is going to hit. Because what's your next thing when the puff hits? You want to turn down to the mark, right? Well, instead of heeling the boat over or having the boat heeled over to leeward when that puff hit you and it turning you up, and then you turn the rudder away, here you're already halfway there. It's just going to pull you straight down. And, you know, a couple little feet here are going to make a huge difference. Then same deal here, heel angle. So this is trees. I told you trees, you were going to make the video here. So these are two great shots. Here, obviously better breeze on the right-hand side. And same thing, slight weather heel, allowing that kite to rotate as far to weather as possible and allowing any puff that hits the boat, allowing it to turn down towards the leeward mark. In lighter breeze, there's always another trick to this, but in lighter breeze, you can see here, they're split on the sides, which is fine. Slight, ever so slight leeward heel, not to weather here. Last thing you want is be heeled to weather. Okay, that's not going to work in this instance. Because in lighter air, you're going to want to actually come up when that puff hits. And granted, the puff is, from 4 to 5, not from 8 to 10. So you want the gravity obviously to help your sail stay out, and that leeward heel to help a little bit of helm on the boat, keep the rudder so it has water going over both sides of it, which is what we want. And then having that little bit of feel and having the next puff help you to get speed, right? Because with speed comes angle. And so the last thing you want to do is try to cheat here in the light air, because you won't gather the speed that you need. You have to try to make apparent wind when there's not enough wind. So that little bit of leeward heel will help you do that. Try to create more apparent wind. When you have enough, obviously, you're just trying to soak it, milk it, do whatever you can to go fast and get down to that leeward mark. Unwanted tendencies. So I had to use my picture of my buddy Tim here. This is Tim Porter sailing with his son. So all things being fair, he's letting his son drive, and he's being very casual. He's sitting on the transom effectively, and the boat's heeled to leeward, doing all the things. And it's breezy this night. It was a nice night, doing all the things that normally you wouldn't want to do. So I just had to use Tim as an example here, but too much leeward heel will exacerbate trying to get downwind. So here, effectively, if the mark were, down below them, they're not doing anything to help themselves get there. That leeward heel is keeping the boat turning up into the wind or to the right here. And we're assuming that the mark is obviously to the left. As the puff hits, the boat loads up. The natural heeling force of the boat does what? Causes it to want to round up. And so as soon as you do that, or as soon as the boat heels over, it naturally loads up the rudder, causing too much helm. So all of a sudden, the helm is getting pushed away because the boat is already heeling up, wanting to turn right. And then Tim's probably going to yell at him saying, we got to get down. We got to get down. So then all of a sudden you got to use the rudder to push it away and start dragging the rudder through the water. And it's a big rudder, right? So it's efficient, yes, but big. Now the boat's heeled over. It's already starting to head up. The apparent wind is going forward. The spinnaker trimmer is now pulling the spinnaker in, which is the opposite of going down, right? So like I said here, good luck getting back downwind. Gotta love you, Tim. I hope you're on here tonight. So I know there's a lot of questions and stuff regarding setting and dousing. So kind of go through a couple things here. I put these in different orders because there are different preferences to how people do them. I'm actually still experimenting a little bit with some different scenarios, but I would say, 90% of the boats I go sailing on, we'll feed the tack line out first. One problem, or not problem, but one issue with the U20 is that we set behind the shrouds, which is one of the things that I'm working on. However, it doesn't make it very conducive to setting the tack line early or pre-setting. I'm kind of iffy on this. I know the generic thing is just to pull the pole out first. So generally you'd get to that weather mark if there's an offset or not. And here comes the pole all the way out. The tack line is then dangling in the water because there's nothing supporting it between when it's out 6 feet and when it turns this corner on your shroud. So it's a little bit dicey. I know there's a lot of stories of shrimping. And that said, I think, obviously the halyard's got to go up fast. A couple of the tricks to this is to not let this halyard get trapped behind the main. So here you can see the main's out. We're not setting it, obviously, but it just kind of as an example that this halyard gets trapped between the spreader and the backside of the main. Do not allow the mainsail out so far as to pin the spinnaker halyard against the back of the spreader. It does nothing but cause problems. It makes it really hard for whoever's hoisting. On my boat, this is a picture of my boat here. I've set it up so that if you do sail with 3, sometimes we sail with 2, but if you do sail with 3, for instance, Evan West here, I put a forward cleat here upside down. And so it's made so that Evan can still be in the position that he's at right here on the weather side, still being able to hike and pull the halyard up without having to come back into the cockpit. So you can do everything from right here. Basically, the halyard can go up and be cleated here. The pole can be pulled through this block right here that self cleats into that cleat, which is the standard stock cleat. Same thing with the furler standard stock cleat. All I did was add a block behind so that whenever you pull this from wherever you are on the boat, it pulls right through the cleat, automatically cleating. So the tack line is the purple one here, or the pink or magenta, whatever you want to call it. I've changed a couple things on my boat. I've gone to a 1 to 2 tack line that in light air is great. In heavy air, it's not so great. So I might be changing that back. We'll see. But this makes a big difference, having the crew being able to stay on the weather side hiking and not have 4 sets of elbows right here on this corner, trying to pull lines. Makes a big difference. So, ultimately, I would love to pre-feed the tack, and I would love the halyard to go up as soon as possible. And then the pull out for the last bit then takes the rest of the tack line with it, and then puts the tack at the end of the pole, but keeps this all out of the water for the time being. And I'm actually going to start experimenting with setting in front of the shrouds. I know everybody's going to have an opinion on that, but I'm going to start experimenting with it and maybe try to figure out how to do that and maybe do it a little bit better. So watch this space for that. Hopefully I don't cause any problems in the meantime. So, with that said, well, actually the next, yeah. Oh, sorry. So that's kind of my, my general ideas. Like I said, you guys are going to kind of have your own, but I like, personally, I would love to pre-feed the tack. I would love that sail to go right out through here because there's plenty of room. And so when we tried it the other day, our problem we had was setting because of the lowers, but we weren't set up to do it right. But it was a problem setting. Dousing, I did not notice a problem. nor did Robbie Lawrence, who was crewing for me at the time. And he just stepped forward, grabbed the kite in front because there was plenty of a gap here, and it actually wasn't so bad. I'd heard some stories about that being the problem, but it turns out it was setting was the problem. So I'm going to work on that, like I said. But some of the tricks are don't ease the main out and don't ease the jib too much. Can't, emphasize enough. If you guys ease that jib too much and that foot gets out here, it captures all this stuff as soon as it goes out. It'll capture the sail. It'll capture these lines. It just becomes an issue. Better to have the jib a little bit slightly over trimmed and out of the way of everything else that you're trying to do than just to release that sheet and have it just, out here flailing in the way of what you're trying to, get the spinnaker up. So those are the two big things that I always notice. If a set's going but poorly, it's one of those two things. It's either the halyard's trapped or something's been wrapped up when the jib was out here. So just try not to ease this too much. Preset and cleat this port spin sheet. This makes a huge difference having this pre-cleated, because especially if you're sailing with two people, getting all of these lines situated and not worrying about the sheet is a huge difference maker. So have that pre-cleated, where when the kite goes up and out, it's going to be at about 90% of where, the proper trim is going to be for it.
Hey, Steve, on the
Yeah.
on that pre-cleating and stuff, what happens is if it's not cleated at all, it'll go forward, and that's when you'll get your twist.
And you get twists and wrap. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes a huge difference, especially because that's the last thing. Well, it should be the last thing that whoever's on board is grabbing, because they have to get everything else situated first. And I know, BJ, you probably do it separately because you actually put the halyard up on your boat, I believe. And then
If we're two up.
if you're, so when you and Emily are sailing, you're putting the halyard up, which, that then obviously that's becoming almost number one, because it's, imperative that it's got the longest way to go. So we got to get it going.
Yeah, but the sheet, just keeping the foot stretched really helps prevent any wraps.
But also prevent shrimping.
Shrimping, exactly. I was going to say, yeah, exactly right. Oh, wow. Why did the picture not show up? There it is. Huh. Are you guys not seeing?
It comes and goes.
Oh, wow. Bummer. I wonder why it does that.
Go back to me.
Okay, well, I guess white screen, whiteboard. Jibing. This is, like I said, BJ's great at this. He's always, you always want to try to jibe in a puff. It's imperative that you keep the boat moving. It's going to help get the sail around. It's going to make everything easier on you. A good roll, very, very helpful. And another thing, we've kind of known this, but this was a big difference maker at J70 Worlds a couple months or last month. And it took me a little while to get on board with it, but not letting the clue fly past the headstay. Basically, you want to pull it around the headstay. So what that means is I was always trying to, if the kite was pulling, I was still kind of easing and trimming, assuming that was helping, get the boat further downwind. However, what happens is the clue gets too far, and we all know this, and then all of a sudden we jibe, and half the sail is kind of wrapped over the front half of itself. Now you're pulling it past itself, and nothing's good about it. So they talked me into just dropping the sheet, basically, even before the jibe, and starting to pull the new sheet and getting that clue on the new side, the new leeward side, before anything. And it made a huge difference because now the sail doesn't have to actually go inside out and drag over itself. You're basically pulling it back to that new side, which allows you then to roll the boat while the spinnaker is full and pulling. And so that way the force of you rolling the boat back is then pulling against the kite, essentially squirting you forward. Little boats like dinghies, you're going to notice that. The U20, it's small enough that it's going to do that as well. So it's kind of basically it's a late jibe on the main. And what I like to do is I'll put my foot down on the leeward rail right at the spinnaker block. That's not wide enough to see. And I'll pin my foot down at the block and I'll just start pulling. And so that way I'm just pulling straight up and getting as many handfuls as possible by the time the main or the boom even comes over. And so, I'm not getting whacked by the boom, luckily, because I'm already done pulling the sheet. So I'm already ducking and getting out of the way by then. So it's a late jibe on the main, and it's overhauling the new sheet as opposed to trying to trim the kite through the jibe. Just get the kite over to where it needs to be as soon as possible and start ripping as soon as possible. So overhaul the sheet, the new sheet sooner, jibe the main later, and then roll and flatten the boat.
One thing from the driving perspective in the main, what I like to do is one, to protect the crew a little bit. I don't always do it, but sort of grab the sheets, hold it center line, let the battens pop, and then let it out. But it sort of helps get the battens on the right side.
And I try to do that as well. I try to grab the bridle system, if you will, when it's coming across, and give it that kind of, that hold or that pull down, which also helps the battens pop.
And it's just, if you take a quick peek down and the person's trimming is pop their head up, you can sort of hold it and protect them, because it does hurt. I haven't.
And I wish this picture
doing it.
I wish this picture would come through, because it's actually you jibing, BJ.
Well, I don't want to give up secrets.
Oh, it might have been the time when maybe it was a late main. Golly, that bums me out. Why is it missing? Let's see. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can.
And sort of one last thing in terms of, you say you sort of stand by the cleat and stuff, just the crew needs to really watch their feet. You sort of nestle your feet down into the cockpit or whatever to make sure you have no sheets under your feet, because
correct. That is the biggest stopper, right? Yeah. Feet are always a problem.
Yeah, and one of the things I have to do, because my crew has neuropathy in her feet, I will actually just kind of keep an eye on that, just in case somebody's stepping on it. And instead of saying anything else, all I'll say is left foot or right foot.
Exactly.
Just keep saying it.
Keep it simple.
She knows, just get her feet up off, because she cannot feel the lines. So it's, especially on my boat, it's really important that I do something like that.
100% agree. And I say that all the time. That's why it's always good to have all the lines, different colors. And I keep it simple, like, put your left hand on the yellow one, or get off the blue line or whatever it is. But you're exactly right. It makes a big difference. Just say left or right. It's much more simpler.
Yeah. And as long as the people if I put somebody new on the boat, I tell them ahead of time, this is what we do on a takedown. And if you your left foot, you pick up your left foot.
Exactly right. So here are conversely, the spinnaker douse. Now this I'm going to hold steadfast on, and I'm going to try to drill it into you, and hopefully you guys do it this way. If not, I'm pretty emphatic that this is what you got to do. The number one thing, and when we're two up, it's me basically doing it, but I'll release the pole first, because as soon as this pole comes sliding back in, it's automatically letting that tack line off. and it's allowing the sail to come back into the boat. Okay. The number 2 thing would be the halyard, because that's, obviously it's got the longest way to go. And the last thing is the tack line. And we're going to get further into this, but I just visually, you can see here on my boat here on the left, once that pole gets let go, that sail is already coming back into the boat, right? It's imperative that you get that tack line, or not tack line, I'm sorry, the pole out line off first. That's an absolute must. And so with this setup, I come over, I reach right in front of this block, and I just pull up on the pole outline. Very first thing, the very next thing, because the crew has already gathered at least the corner of the sail and have it in their hand. As soon as I release this, then I release the halyard, which even if the halyard was put up on the forward cleat, what we'll do on the downwind leg is pull the halyard back through the aft cleat, and it automatically pops out of this forward upside down cleat, right? And so now the halyard is pinned at the back like normal. And so I go off on the pole line, I go off on the halyard, and I'll kind of manage it a little bit. I'll keep my eye on how the gather is going. And then the very last thing is the tack line itself. And that is because, it's still not working. And that is because, now we'll get down to the means of this. So what I want to do here on my takedown is the crew is going to overhaul the port, or the left side spinnaker sheet, from the turning block, just as if you were trying to jibe. Okay. And so if you're down away from the wind, it's going to be a little bit easier. If you're up towards the wind, it might be a little bit tougher, especially, on coming in on port jibe. But if you pull through the turning block, you have all the leverage in the world. It's basically standing up in the cockpit, if you're on port jibe, for instance, and basically just turning towards the left side of the boat, face that block, and just pull it as hard and fast as you can. And these kites are not super big, so you're going to pull whatever it is around the headstay and back to you. As soon as that clue, or the middle of the foot, whatever you want to grab, as soon as you have material, that's when I release the pole outline. Okay. And like I said, it allows the sail to automatically come right into the boat, as long as somebody has their hand on a piece of material of that sail. Then the pole outline, as soon as that goes off, it's going to release the load on the sail, and everything's going to come back to you. The other thing it does is that it allows the pole to now be retracted. Okay. Last thing you want to be doing is trying to go around a mark with that pole out, and you can't, if there's a boat in front of you or a boat next to you, last thing you want to be doing is have that swordfish bill, out there swinging around waiting to grab something. So that you have to let the pole outline off first. It's mandatory. That does everything right for you. And it allows the skipper to obviously place the bow wherever they want. The second release is the halyard. And like I made the note here, it should only be once the retriever or the crew has started gathering the cloth, right? So like I said, if you overhaul and you grab the clue or of the sail, that's one thing. I know a lot of people like to grab the middle of the foot and start pulling it into the boat. You don't have to by any means. As long as you have a piece of material, which the heaviest corner is the clue, or when you're trying to retrieve at least. So that's where you can kind of pull the hardest on. But once they get that, then that's when the halyard's going to pop. And I'll blow the halyard. The initial part goes pretty fast. The first, I'm guessing 10 or 15 feet, it's going to go quick. And so that's when I'll try to manage it. I'll try to watch how the crew is gathering, right? If they're making pretty good progress, I won't try to manage it at all. And what I'll do is we try to flake it in the bag, or if you're not running a bag, at least in the hatch and not in the cockpit floor. This goes back to left foot, right foot. The last place you want the halyard is on the cockpit floor. It's bad enough that we have the sheets on the cockpit floor and we try to jibe and we're standing on them and everything else. The last thing you want to do is have your foot on the halyard, because as soon as you have your foot on the halyard and it gets that little bit of resistance, it goes right back in the cleat, right? It's all happened. It's happened to all of us. So the last thing you want is for that to do that. So I'll try to throw it in the hatch so it has that kind of right angle to slide by to go in that cleat, or past the cleat, I should say. And that little bit of slight drag also helps on the douse. So the crew, when they're taking it down, instead of that halyard just getting smoked, that little bit of resistance, they can kind of pull against. And then finally the tack line. Like I said here, it's the least important, because you've already gained, when you let the pole back, you gained half the distance of the foot already. So the tack line merely needs to be released for the final 5-6 feet of the sail coming in. But by then it's 3/4 of the way already in the bag. So the tack line is last for me. Don't let the tack line off with the pole out, ever, please. Pull out line always first. That's like automatically releasing the tack line. I kind of run through some of these. So they're just kind of generic ideas, and that I kind of came up with here. The title flatter equals projected area. So there's two ways to think of this. Let me see if I turn myself on. Okay. So if you all want to kind of do this exercise real quick. So if you take your hand and you just lay it flat, you can't argue with me that the distance from your fingertip to your wrist is the same no matter what. I don't know of anybody that can stretch theirs or shrink theirs, right? So this distance, let's say, is 8 inches. No matter which way you slice it, when you pull it out tight, it's 8 inches. So now, if you just take your hand and you cup it, okay, this distance is still 8 inches, no matter what, right? We can't change this distance, inside or out. It's still 8 inches. The difference is that we cupped it, right? So this is sail shape. So what that did is these edges, right? The edge of my wrist and the edge of my fingertips got closer together. Okay, that's fine, but we caused all this shape in the meantime. Okay, so this is flatter equals projected area. So projected area being, if this is one edge of the sail and this is the other edge of the sail, now we're about 6 feet apart, or 6 inches apart, I should say. Okay, so this 6 inches, the extra 2 inches had to go somewhere. So it's out here in sail shape. So if you go back and you flatten your sail, now you're at 7 inches, okay? And then when you pull it straight, or like when you're essentially measuring the sail, you're pulling it out tight. When you find your girths, you're gonna pull, let's just kind of mark it here and here, and you pull tight, and that's what gives you the mid girth, okay? And we all have to fit into that measurement. There's that constraint for that, okay? But no matter what, that number is gonna be the same. Well, we're just gonna assume that everybody's at max, and we're all gonna have that same number. But this is the difference in flying, okay? You can see here, so this is BJ sail, blue, gray, and white. So it's a much flatter projected area sail. So it looks wider when you look at it from edge to edge, okay? And that's because there's less shape in the middle, okay? So this is basically trying to get projected area, just edge to edge, as far apart as you can, while still, maintaining, sail shape. And so, for instance, this other kite here, and I think this is actually the Gen 1 kite, but it's a much fuller type sail. And so what happens is, remember, this number is the same, the width from there to there and there to there. So this looks much narrower, but that's because it's full of shape in the middle of it. Okay. So if you guys are seeing, so with that said, obviously you can't have everything, and, still get the benefits of You have to pay the price somewhere. And so what happens is with a flatter projected area, you end up with unsupported material. And so this is what happens when you try to take a really flat sail and try to go really deep, and then it gets unsupported because there's not the extra sail shape in there. It's meant to be just like this. It's meant to be wide and projected, right? So there's two trains of thoughts here. There's just going for this and just utilizing flow over the sail and just maximum projected area versus, trying to actually harness some of this extra wind and try to make, the sail do other things. But like I said, BJ does a great job at making this really flat kite go really far downwind, and especially in, marginal windy conditions. But like I said, there's always a flip side. And so this is what we noticed when we started redesigning some of the spinnakers was that, when this happens, we notice the sail getting unsupported. And so what happens is the boat, I should say the helmsman naturally has a tendency to turn up into the breeze and try to fill it again, which thereby kind of gives away distance. So that's when we were doing some testing, that was one thing that we noticed with we were actually testing an older Doyle sail. But that was the tendency that we noted, was that you always had to turn up to try to get it to fly again. And so that's when we decided we would start trying to make them a little bit fuller, just so that way you could still sneak downwind and have it be supported and pulling. So I believe this is I think this is one of the, I guess, Italian boats, maybe. I found a couple of these pictures from somewhere else. Pole and tack line deflection. The tack line can be pulled off center line. So I was kind of telling you earlier, if that tack comes off the pole sideways versus coming straight up, it's not generally what we want. Lure deflection is continually pulling the bow down, right? So this, obviously you can sail to sail is wanting to go this way, left to right. And so it's wanting to pull the bow of the boat, same thing, from left to right. So yes, you want to go downwind. However, you also want to get the boat going forward, not just trying to pull it sideways through the water. It allows the sail to drift behind the main, right? Or become more hidden behind it. If you think about it, the mast is out here. So this sail is now rotating to leeward even further, essentially getting it further behind the main, which is not what we want. Causes more sail area to be to leeward of the boat, right? So we're taking this whole sail plan and you're shifting it, basically over here to the right. Every time you place more load way out here on the right-hand side, it's causing heeling force on the boat, which is then translating to leeward heel, which is then turning the boat up. Again, not necessarily what we want. The boat heels over, the boat naturally heads up, and the rudder gets pulled in the opposite direction. We talked about that earlier. So trying to get downwind, as soon as this boat heels over, it's going to turn the wrong way, and then the helmsman's going to pull the big rudder the wrong way and just cause all this drag back here. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Again, over here, some Germans. Careful not to oversheet, right? You can see here how the leech of the spinnaker is like physically almost touching the backside of the mainsail. I mean, it's ridiculous. The boats are super wide. However, that sheeting angle is still pretty dramatic, and you can tell that's not what you want. That's definitely not a good thing whatsoever. Here you can see just having that sheet eased a little further, you can see the difference in the height from the deck, right? Just easing that sheet that little bit allows that clew to lift up. Nice slot, between the main and the spinnaker. This one obviously oversheeted, and like I said, it's You wouldn't even have to trim the main right here. It's going to backwind to the middle of the boat. You would have to have the traveler all the way up and the main sheet up like you were going to weather to try to make this work. And it's just not gonna. So just be careful not to oversheet. It's one big thing. It's kind of a no-brainer. But so this is kind of some of the little things that we've been working on recently. These pictures are actually from 2017. This was the Gen 1 kite. I didn't know to start messing with this as much back then, but for illustrative purposes, you can see, what these sails look like. They're short left. Here, I didn't know what I was doing, so I was pulling it all the way tight. While I was having Maddie, this is Tim Porter and his daughter Madison. I was having her pull the tack line tight. I was actually on the beach taking pictures because I'd never seen the sails from off the boat. And so you can see how tight that luff gets. And we're going to talk about this here in a second, but this is the class sail. Obviously, they're all like this. They're all, basically they're a 2-block, not even, I don't even know if they're 2-block measurement, pretty close. So what I've done is started thinking about it, and I've started messing around with allowing the pole to actually come back into the boat a little bit. There's a measurement, a class measurement that's allowed for the length of the pole from the bow. I believe that we don't need to be anywhere near it. And I think there's a benefit to not being anywhere near the maximum. And so what I've started doing is actually pulling the pole in. At the time that I was doing this, I was thinking like 6 inches. This last weekend, we did it about 1 foot. And it's surprisingly, it doesn't get off center line very far. I know it's kind of a big issue, but surprisingly, it doesn't get off center. But what it did do is it allowed the short left spinnaker to then be able to be pulled tight against the pole, or tighter. There's probably, a couple inches of tack line off, but certainly not 18 inches of tack line off. And what that did is, especially in the chop, is that it held the spinnaker much, much steadier. We haven't two-boat tested it to see, but it made it a ton easier for the trimmer, and it made it a ton easier mentally on the skipper, not having the sail bounce around all the time, and not having the tack line. If a puff hit, the tack line would kind of pull over, and then it would come back, and it would always moving around. If the tack's moving around, it's probably not translating to pulling the boat forward. So this might catch some of you off guard a little bit. It's worth messing around with. I wouldn't just, make it a hard and fast rule, but it does seem to be making a difference, and it is something that I'm going to play with a lot more.
So Steve, what you're talking about is doing it more in chop, less in, you wouldn't do it in flat water, but more in chop.
Anytime that the tack of the sail is moving around.
Yeah, okay.
So whether it be chop or light breeze, I think it's just a matter of, we have to try to find a way to steady these sails, because they are short luff. They're just, so there's certain things that are awkward. And so you say, well, why not just pull it tight like it is in those pictures? Well, because then you're making the entry too tight, too flat, too straight. So by pulling that pole back, you're decreasing the distance again, right, between the tack and the spinnaker halyard hoist point. So by pulling the pole back, you're decreasing that distance, which then if you pull the tack down all the way, you're essentially, it's like lengthening the luff. So like I said, we've got to quantify it a little bit more, but that is something that we're playing with. So don't get on your crew and say, hey, you have to pull that pole all the way out. I'm pretty sure it doesn't need to be all the way out all the time. So just kind of in the back of your mind. You can see with it only retracted 6 inches, I only lost about 3 inches of luff length in a 2-block measurement. But like I said, this last week we were a better part of almost 1 foot back, and it's hard to say whether it was better or not. It made the sail seem a lot better. Whether it was faster or not overall, I don't know, because we were sailing against BJ, and he's always going to be fast downwind. So, yeah, we need to do some more testing and quantify some of these things. This is one way to fix it. You just put a beach ball up. I'm not sure where these guys are. I'm sure somebody probably does, but they got the square top main. He's got the Kevlar jib, which is not a bad idea. The bigger jib is, I believe, a good idea. The square top main is definitely not, but we won't get into that. But this beach ball here that they made, it's crazy. I'm sure it's got to be, probably max pH girths. It's got a ton of vertical camber. There's not a flat spot in the sail. But the nice thing about it is that the tack and the clew are pulling up, right? So this sail is out in front of the boat, pulling it faster, obviously, because it's bigger, but it's pulling up. That's the biggest thing I notice here. That's pulling the bow up of the boat, right? And the clew's doing the same thing. The clew's pulling up, right? So it's pulling up on the boat also. So granted, these things are minimal, but they make big differences. If you're pulling the boat up, what's that doing for you? It's essentially making the boat lighter, okay? We're not changing the water line length or anything like that, but we're trying to make the boat lighter, right? If you hook a crane to this mast tip and pull up on it, it's going to essentially make the boat lighter through the water, okay? Less displacement. So if you can use the sails to do that, why wouldn't you? I'm glad that these guys did this, because this is what I've done. And I'm still playing with this. I took a sail that I had designed, a class sail, and I pulled it off the shelf and I cut it apart just last month, actually. And I added 2 feet to the luff. So this was all class dimensions, except for I added 2 feet to the luff, which made the luff 33 feet 1 inch. The class max is allowed to be 31 feet 4. Like I said here, it produces a more vertically oriented sail, which is exactly what we want. We want this sail getting out in front of the boat and pulling up and forward. This has got to be a game changer. This picture in the middle here just happened to be snapped last week. We put it up in between races just to see, because I hadn't seen it, what it looked like flying. And I had John Butine take some pictures. So where he was about, obviously here, even with us, and about 5 boat lengths to leeward, maybe. And in the matter of 2 or 3 minutes, we sailed down in front of him, and then he heated up and ended up about 3 to 4 lengths above us, up on our hip, all in the matter of, like I said, probably 3 minutes or so. So we're going to do some more testing with this. It's got to be dramatic, and it's got to be a game changer, and it has to make these boats more fun, more exciting, and easier to sail. So again, watch this space, but I can't impart enough to you guys. This would wake up this boat and take it into the 2000s. How's that? I think it would make a big difference. So I don't want to get too far off of it, but just if you guys think about it, this would be really nice. It would make the boats a lot better. So takeaways, going back to the first thing, look upwind for that puff that you want to be in next. Okay. It's vitally important that you set yourself up for each puff going downwind. Velocity turns into a shift, right? Anytime you get velocity, the boat's going to turn one way or the other. More times than not, the velocity is going to help you turn down where you want to go. The spinnaker is always going to fly better when it's further from the main. That's just kind of a generic takeaway. You always want that sail to be as far from the main as possible. You definitely don't want this right next to it, knocking on its door. Jiving the spinnaker before the main. We were doing that the past couple of weeks. Seems to be making a pretty good difference. And then douse early. That's kind of a, I think it goes for anybody really. Douse early and often. It's just kind of a play on words, but yeah, hopefully the high wind kit. Yeah, I know they make the high wind kits for these little, I call them jock straps or high wind kits. Yeah, I'm sure it makes a difference. But I'm not going to put them on my boat, and I'm probably not going to sail my boat in enough breeze that it makes a difference. For you guys that have them, it's going to help, I'm sure. But it looks a bit like a mess to me.
Yeah, that high wind kit works really well.
It does. Okay.
It does. Jim Antrim put the prototype on my boat.
Okay.
And when my aluminum mast did come down, it broke at the spreaders.
Really?
Yep.
Not at the gooseneck.
Not at the gooseneck.
Okay. Interesting. That's
Broke at
good.
the spreaders, the spreader bar fell out.
Spreader bar. Yeah.
Before the mast broke, we were passing Express 27 and Express 34 under Main and Jim.
That's awesome.
We won't mention whose brilliant idea it was to put the spinnaker up.
Well, you know what they say. I'll put it up, let God take it down.
Also, the high wind kit kept the jib sheets from when they were flailing from getting wrapped around the tactic bracket.
Okay. Yeah.
That was
I can
a
see
nice
that.
benefit.
That's probably not a
so-
bad, yeah.
Since we switched to the carbon rig, we have not put the high wind kit back on though.
Right.
We've got a hard time bending that carbon rig enough, and the high wind kit kind of restricts it a little bit.
I can see that. Yeah.
For those who don't know, we are 155 and we play in San Francisco Bay.
Okay. There you go.
We haven't sailed in 20 knots since Sunday. Yeah, that picture there, we believe, is Treasure Island and the Old Bay Bridge. The
Yeah.
boats are heading north from Alcatraz back up to Richmond.
Yep.
And that's probably either the Great Pumpkin or the Big Daddy Regatta.
Okay. You can see somebody's
And-
back here already having problems somewhere in that back
Yeah.
corner.
And I don't remember whose boat 182 was.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like they have the high wind kit.
No,
I'm
this is-
not totally
this is-
sure, but
This is going to be pre high wind kit.
yeah. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
great
look.
picture. You just kind of wonder what happened to the
The
rig
highway
after
takes
this.
you that from
Yeah.
from going out of column that badly.
I could see that. And, obviously the Vang is going to have a big impact on that. And like I said, how far out that boom's going and, getting off, getting on the side of that D section,
Right.
obviously is going to cause problems.
Right. And the high wind kit stops that deflection.
Yep.
So yeah,
Good,
it
good.
works really well. Like I said, the only possible downside to it is that it can restrict how far forward the gooseneck can go when you're well on the boom vang to try to
Right. And that kind of goes back to my upwind video and not using the boom vang. They would
We-
go
we
hand
haven't
in
seen-
hand.
We haven't seen the upwind one yet.
Oh,
Apparently,
okay. Well, there you go. You'll be in for a shock.
Okay. So if you got another way to make that mainsail flat, I want to know about it.
You just do it all with the rig and the main sheet bridle. Yep.
Your aluminum or carbon?
I'm aluminum.
Hmm.
And I know, obviously I'm starting to find out there's some downsides, I think, to the carbon. I would love to have one, but I'm also noticing some things with them in terms of course, they're both SeaTechs that I've sailed with. I haven't sailed with the Fortes, so
Yeah, most of the boats on the bay have carbon have the Forte mast.
The Forte, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the two boats that are here that have carbon rigs are both SeaTech.
Yeah, and all three of the rigs are completely different.
Really interesting.
Yeah, there's almost no comparison between the SeaTech and the Forte masts.
Right.
They're both extremely different.
Yep, I can believe that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see a sailmaker get the Forte mast and do some sail tuning for that,
Mhm.
because I think that's unfortunately sadly lacking for those of us who have that mast.
Well, I mean, kind of getting off sidebar, but you know, when we took the brand new main and put it up on the SeaTech rigs, and I took pictures, and you'll see it in the upwind video, but not dramatically different whatsoever. Very, very, the aluminum and the carbon and the SeaTech, I should say, very, very on par with each other.
Now
So-
when that SeaTech mast was designed, it was designed to have the same fore and aft bend characteristics as the aluminum rig.
And the weight,
Unfortunately-
right? Yeah.
But
Mhm.
unfortunately, because it's round, it doesn't have the same side to side bend characteristics.
Right.
And the Forte one is, I don't know what they did with it. It's decent, but it's just stiffer than the aluminum rig.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's inherently it should be, right? So the biggest thing I'm noticing is the molded in spreader brackets versus the spreader bars. I think there's a big difference there.
Ours has a spreader bar that passes through.
Oh, it does. Okay, interesting. So it's not molded into the rig.
Nope, not molded in.
Okay. Well, just shows we got to get one here at some point. Start
Yeah,
figuring it out.
And that's a good thing, because we bent that bar trapping the spinnaker halyard between the spreader and the main on a set.
Well, someone was pretty strong.
Somebody strong. Yeah, it ain't me.
It just kept pulling.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Well, good. Well, any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm kind of bummed this picture of BJ jibing didn't turn out. I don't know why. So strange. But
Steve, any tips, tricks for more? We've seen a lot of heavier stuff in the video, a little bit of light air, but for what we're expecting to see this weekend, I think it's going to be very light. Just basically follow the puffs, keep looking upwind.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's just trying to stay in pressure all the time. And I mean, I'd say follow BJ, but
Yeah. I mean,
that's not going to work for everybody.
When is going, staying down, and when is coming up, going too up? When are you just chasing the breeze too much, where your VMG becomes not good?
Well, I mean,
In
you have
lighter
to,
air.
you have to weigh that against, your competition, really. That's why we're sailing one design boats.
Yeah.
The difference is, like we talked about, the different designs of the spinnakers cause you to do different things. And so it's just, it's just, you just have to figure out what you like to do and what works for you. I don't know that there's no hard and fast rule for when you turn up or when you head down, other than, just try to sail in as much puff as possible, and you try to sail as low as possible without, slowing yourself too much. So.
Jonathan, we do a lot of up and down. There's a lot of come up, get that next puff, come off as soon as you accelerate, come back up for pressure, come back off.
Heat it up, burn it off.
Yep.
Heat it up, burn it off.
Yep.
And that's going to be more of a trick with the flatter sails, like we said, because they do become easily unloaded. And so that's why you always have to then
Repeat,
start
yeah.
hunting and put the pressure back in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, good
You know,
point.
whereas, Tim always said his version 1 sail, he always liked it so much because he could just bury the boat
Mhm.
and just kind of go the same speed and just kind of go wherever he wanted. And as soon as you pulled the bow up, it never went faster, but you went the same speed with it down. But I wasn't a fan of that very first sail, so that's why this is the
Steve,
one he was talking about. Yeah.
Steve, maybe you can take that picture that didn't show up with the dialogue about the jibe and just
Yeah.
append it at the end.
Yeah, let
Just
me
Separate it from not now, you can, when we post it.
okay. Let me see if I just change the order of it. Let's see.
It just doesn't want to load.
Bummer, yeah. Well, if I could move this box, I could actually, let me see. Oh, here. Let me see if I can just pull it up and find it. Stand by. Who knows what you guys are going to see now? Are you guys seeing all my pictures here?
No, we're still seeing the jibe
Oh, you
slide,
are,
so you're okay.
Okay, stand by. Let me see here. Let me do this. Let me adjust my presentation real quick. You guys bear with me. Sorry about this. Let me just add a slide. Okay, you see a blank white screen, is that right?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, stand by. Now I have to find it in these little icons. Forget what I named it.
Steve, while you're looking for that photo,
Uh-huh.
you could answer, is there any time that you'd want to tighten up your leech cord on the spinnaker? When would there be times that you'd want to do that?
I mean, there's really not. It's just kind of a thing that you normally would want to set it and forget it. But it should make, that's not it. That's a good picture though. It should make it a little bit easier and less fluttery, if that sounds appropriate.
Yeah, I was wondering if pulling in on that leech cord would force the air farther forward to the luff of the sail and allow the luff of the sail to float a little bit more to windward.
I mean, no. Pulling the cords on the edges aren't gonna change dramatic. All they're gonna do is keep sorry. I'm gonna try to make this bigger for you guys. It's just gonna keep it from fluttering. I mean, at a certain point, it's like pulling the leech line on the jib, and what happens is you just end up creating a hook, basically, and that's usually not. So this is the picture that was hiding there. Can you guys see it now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do.
Okay, here we go. I don't know why it wasn't working behind there, but okay, so yeah, so so this is BJ right in the middle here, jibing, and you can see what happens when the clue got up in front of the luff, even because it wasn't pulled back soon enough. But again, a late main jibe, which is good. Nice, roll. That leeward roll is coming. The only difference here would be that clue should already be trimmed in back there, and this sail should already be on that new jibe. Because then what's going to happen is, like we talked about, we're going to hold the boom in the center of that jibe, and the battens are going to pop, and the boat's going to continue moving up, and it's just going to, as it does, that kite's going to already be full, and it's already going to look like that when it starts, the blue and red one. And then as it rolls down, it's going to pull that out and, shoot the boat forward.
So one of the things that we were doing Labor Day weekend, Ken wanted to use a technique that he's been using on the VX. And I think he called it like a snap through, which I think you guys also did on the J70.
Blow through, yeah.
Flow through, yeah, that was it.
Mhm.
I don't know that I wasn't doing it before, but it was, we do have more of a tendency when I'm not on the boat with Ken to just let the clue go toward the,
Right,
you know,
right.
just forward of the mast and then just overhaul the hell out of the new sheet.
Yep.
So.
And that's right. And so the blow through, you know, all it's doing is basically it's allowing the spinnaker, for instance, on Teresa's boat here, the blue, black and gold or yellow. It's allowing it to just, you're basically holding the clue back.
Right.
And then as soon as the boat turns, it pins itself against the roller furler.
Right.
And then essentially it wants to then blow itself through that slot.
Right. We did find it doesn't work as well in bigger breeze because the kite's so much different than the VX.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, dramatically different than the VX
works
kite.
pretty well in lighter breeze.
These sails are flat, but not as flat as a VX kite.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So
Anyway,
okay.
so this is that picture I was trying to get. So Emily's head's not on the boom yet, so that's good. So there's still somebody down here on the leeward side, though.
I was wondering if that was me already planted on the, having been hit.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I think that's not a takedown.
No, I don't know. There's no marks around.
Huh, looks funny.
Well, look, yeah, the tack is in-ish. Maybe not, maybe it pulls out.
It looks like
Yeah, you
it.
can see so this is the luff actually back here.
Yeah,
This is the leech right here in front.
she didn't pull fast enough.
Oh, funny. Good stuff. All right, you guys. Well, I hope that was I hope it was informative. I don't know.
It always is.
Could have or not have. So
Yeah,
gosh,
thanks, Steve. That was great. And if anybody has further questions, just send them along and I'll send them over to Steve and we'll get them up on the forum. And if you have ideas on other things you want to see, you know, we can get into starts, we can get into some perf dynamics, you know, how to stay away from the big guys, how to keep your air free. Sailing in waves for those that sail in big waves. So just let us know. I think these are good.
awesome. Well, appreciate everybody watching.
Thanks,
And if you haven't seen the upwind one, go back and watch the upwind one. It's definitely more dynamic than this, I think. So
yeah. And Steve will send over the slide presentation. I'll get the recording up on the website.
sounds good.
Thank you for everything, Steve.
Thanks,
no
Steve.
problem.
That
Take
was
care,
great.
everybody.
Steve. Great job.